Greetings. Welcome to exercise 4.12 of 412. We're also going to do 419 in this podcast. So this is a response to a couple of requests on the forum asking to take a look at these problems. So now you should definitely have your textbook out because these are going to be bare bones presentations, and I'm assuming you've got your book in front of you, okay? All right, so in part A of 412, they say explain what the value of 4 in the table represents. So what does this value 4 here represent? Well, let's go ahead and check out what we think that's going to be. Well, let's see. What that's telling us is that there are 4 students that rated their elective as poor. Okay, spell that correctly. There we go. Okay, so that's what part A is all about. Excuse me. In part B, they want us to give the conditional distribution of course rating given the reason for taking the course. All right. Okay, so let me get rid of some of the stuff here. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that response right there also. Let's clean up our little mess here. Okay, so the big thing you got to remember is what do they mean by the word given here? When they say given, they're sticking you in just particular rows or particular columns. In other words, they're saying that the world only exists in that row, tell me something about it. If the world only existed in that column, tell me something about it. So in this case, the given was the reason for taking the course. So what that's telling us is that we're stuck in the rows, okay? So what I'm telling you is that, for example, this row right here would be one of the 2 rows. So given that the course is required, right, what percentage of the students found it poor, good, or excellent? So to be able to do that, what we've got to do is go through and quickly calculate what the row total is. In other words, what's the total of 16, 18, and 16? Let's see, 16 and 16 is 32. So that gets me what? 32 plus 38, I think that's looking like 70, right? So the row total was 70, so it's 16 70ths, 30 70ths, and 16 70ths, all right? So let's go get our calculator out here real quick, and let's take a look at those as percentages, okay? So as percentages, that would be, well, let's see, what was that again? That was going to be 16 70ths. So 16 70ths, which tells us that basically 22.9% of the required students found their course poor. So let's go ahead and write that in. I'm going to change the color back to black here. So that's 22.9% would go in there, okay? And then if we take 38 70ths, we get basically 54.3%, okay? So in here it's 54.3%, and then again we're going to have another 22.9%, okay? So what that is that's telling me, given that the course was required, what percentage of the students found it poor, good, or excellent? Okay. Now, same song, second verse for elective. We have to do it for electives also. So notice in the electives we got what, 4, which gets us 20, which have 30 in total. So stay with the same color coding here. So we'd have 4 30ths, 10 30ths, and 16 30ths respectively. Okay. Or if you go ahead and do those in your calculator again, get those turned into percentages, you got 4 divided by 30, which gets us 13.3%, okay? And then in the 10 30ths, hopefully you can see that's going to be 33%, but we'll do it anyway. And then we've got 16 30ths, which gets us 53%, okay? So if we write all that in here, my black pen back here again. So this is going to be what? What did we say here? We said this was 33%, this was 53%, and I believe this was, if I recall correctly, let's go take another quick peek there because I don't have a memory right now. It's what, 13%? Yeah, so that's 13%. Okay, so again, the interpretation of this is going to be that if it was an elective course, 13% of the students found it poor, 33% of it good, and 53% found it excellent. And, if you take a look at comparing those two distributions to each other, that's not that surprising because usually elective courses are courses that students take because they had an interest to begin with. Required courses, such as this one, you didn't necessarily have a keen interest in taking statistics before you actually took it, all right? Okay, so I'm going to let you go ahead and use that for your Part C or however you'd like to write that up. Okay, let's go take a look at exercise 4.19. In 419, there are two possible tables that you can construct here, but I'm just going to go ahead and roll with the third paragraph in that problem and just look at the effective versus ineffective teachers in the high achievement and low achievement students, okay? And they didn't really ask us, tell us a particular graph to generate, but they said go ahead and generate an appropriate graph, okay? Well, so for the sake of contrast to the last problem, let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to say, what is the achievement level given the teaching effectiveness? In other words, what students were placed with what percentage of students of high achieving students were placed with the effective teacher, and what percentage of low achieving students were stuck with the effective teacher. Now, since there was no direction given on which way to do this, you're welcome to go the other way around and it would still be correct, okay? So let's see, we got 80 plus 40, which is 120. So that's going to be 81 20ths and 41 20ths respectively, okay? On the ineffective, we've got 30 plus 77, which is 107. So that would be both of these divided by 107 respectively, okay? So let's do the same thing we did like in the last problem. Let's go ahead and get the calculator out real quick and turn those into percentages. So if we take 80 and divide that by 120, we end up with 66.7%. And if you take 40 and divide that by 120, you should get 33%, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and put those back over here. So that's 66.7%, and this is 33.3% respectively, okay? All right, same song, second verse for the last column here. And we take 30, we're going to go ahead and divide that by 107. Oops. 107, okay. And we get 28%, and then if we take 77 and divide that by 107, we get 72%, which that hopefully makes sense because they have to add up to 100%, okay? So we get 28% and 72% respectively. Okay, now they ask us to make appropriate charts to go with these. Now you have a couple of choices here. One way would be to take a look at this information with pie charts. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do a rough pie chart for you here. Although I do have a circle tool that I'll use to kind of get to my pies looking more like pies and less like blobs, which is what they would look like if I drew them by hand. Okay. Alright, so let's move these guys so they're roughly about there and there. Okay, so I'm just going to hack out a couple simple pie charts here. They're not going to be perfect because I'm doing it by hand, but what we have is one pie chart for effective teachers, and then we'll have a second pie chart for ineffective teachers. Oops, right, we're there. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go ahead and use my handy dandy line tool here to make my pie charts with. Okay, so in the first case we see that under high achievement with the effective, we've got about 2/3 of them are in that category, and then a third of them are in with the low achievement. So say roughly, that looks like roughly what, about a third there. Okay, so in this chart I could say, okay, this area right here is represented by the high achieving students, and this area here is represented by the low achieving students. All right. Okay, now all we've got to do is reverse the situation over here. When we were talking about the ineffective teachers, what we know there is that we've got less than a third of the high achieving kids went there. So we've got what? Go ahead and say about like that. Okay. And if we go ahead and label those again, we can put over here, put that that's the high achieving students there, and put the low achieving students up here. Okay. Now that's one possibility, is doing pie charts, but of course it's not the only possibility. Another way you could have done this is with using bar charts. So I'm going to do bar charts down below, again keeping effective and ineffective in the same column here. Okay. So let's just go ahead and make myself an axis here. Okay. And we can make ourselves a couple of rectangles here. Okay. So in this case, let's say that I'm going to do that rectangle for high achieving, and that rectangle would be for low achieving, and then over here we'd have this rectangle would be for the high achieving, and this rectangle would be for the low achieving. So do a little more cleaning up here of this mess. Oops, grabbed the wrong tool there. That's not what I wanted. So let's put that about there, and that about there. Get you down here a little bit. Let's go get rid of that little mess up there. Hang on just a sec here. I want it to be pretty. I want all this hassle, right? Okay, so, alright, one last thing here. I got to label it appropriately, and in each of these columns, we've got to say that this column right here would be what, for the high achieving students, and then this column over here would be for the low achieving students, and then same thing over here. This is our high achieving students, and this is our low achieving students. Okay. Now, if you wanted to, this is just one of the two possible tables that we could have created out of this. There is actually another one you could create with how they performed on the math tests, but I think for the sake of sanity, we only really need to do one of these to kind of get the idea that's going on. So if you had chosen the second paragraph in this problem and done the same exercise that I've done here with how they did on the test in 7th grade, then that's perfectly acceptable. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully that helps you get going on this. If you need any more help, don't be shy about firing an email.